Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Honest HR Nitrous. I'm Bill, the company's expert. I think this is the latest start I think I've ever done for a live stream on this channel ever. So there you go. Just running a little late today, but thank you for your patience. This is the twice weekly live stream where we talk about life, the universe, and everything. We talk about anything to do with hiring, careers, job search, that kind of stuff. Resumes, interviews, discovering jobs, all that kind of stuff. And we talk about not just the theory of how it should go, but the reality of how this stuff actually goes, how interviews go, how your experiences are in the hiring process, all of that. Warts and all, complete with stupidity, unprofessionalism, and rudeness. That's what most people have to deal with. So that's what we talk about. The title of today's episode is Your Experiences Finding a Job. So I'm going to be wanting to hear from you guys today. This is an interactive live stream, so you should see a chat box somewhere near the video feed. Get in the chat box and let me know what's up. Let me know what you've been dealing with, what you're wondering about, all that kind of stuff. Or if you just want to talk or react to stuff, that's cool too. I think that's the public service announcements over with. Oh yeah, as always, special shout out to my YouTube channel members, my super thanks donors, my Patreons, and of course you, my participants. If you guys weren't here, I wouldn't be here either. So thank you for that. Okay, I really don't have much of an agenda. I suppose I can kick things off by talking about the fact that there are many ways to get hired. And I don't know what your experiences have been doing various things, but there's many different activities you could do in a job search to get hired. And some of these are a little bit, they gravitate a little towards different things based on the fact that you might be in a certain industry or in a certain country or at a certain level. Okay? Like entry level, professional level, manager or executive, or board member, like there's all kinds of things. But generally speaking, you can do any and all of these, right? It's not like you're only limited to one or two. There's many, like, let's see, I kind of jotted a couple of things down so I wouldn't freeze up live on the air, but everybody knows the standard things like applying to job postings. Yes, we know about that. Applying in person, that's where you go down physically to the employer and you walk through the front door and you apply in person, right? And while this is more common in sort of low-level stuff, like if you're working in a store or something, and a strip mall or whatever, you go down to the store and you apply in person. You can do this at every level, and sometimes it gets you noticed and it distinguishes yourself, and you elevate yourself above the crowd by doing things like this. Networking with recruiters. I don't recommend that, but a lot of people do, and some people claim that they have gotten the job that way. So, hey, if that works for you, all the more power to you. You can do direct outreach on social networking. That's what I do recommend. Reaching out to employers. You don't need to know a single soul in your entire city or wherever you're located in your vicinity. You don't need to know anyone, and you can leverage networking to get a job. You reach out to somebody. There's a variety of ways to do it, but you could do it on social networking. And on social networking, there's a variety of ways to do it because there's, many different messages you could send, right? That's what I do recommend. That has really worked for me personally for many different things in my career, and I recommend it to you guys. I also put it in this course, so there you go. I see there's some people in the chat. Thank you for participating. We got Joseph, so shout out to Joseph. Mohammed says, I just got rejected. Third time this month with 2.4 years web development experience. I got laid off 2 months ago now. Feeling like my experience is not paying off. Listen, Mohammed, there is, maybe you know this already, maybe you don't, but I know that there's a lot of people, especially younger people, that are realizing that there is a difference between having capabilities and getting a job. It's a completely separate thing. You know, you could be the most talented, valuable employee out there, but that doesn't necessarily mean that finding a job will be quick, or it'll be easy, or the method to do it will be obvious for you if you've never really boned up and studied up on that particular process. If you're a web developer, I'm making assumptions here. I'm making an assumption that you're not a salesperson. You've never done personal selling or this kind of thing. I got a bit of hair sticking out the back of my head. What the hell was that? Awesome. Yes, you all know me as the person with the most fantastic hair on YouTube, and I do my best to try and maintain that title. No, you might know that there's a difference in being talented and being valuable and getting a job. They're two different things. Now, if you've never worked in sales, chances are you will hate this process and you will be unfamiliar with what you're required to do, because it's essentially the sales process. You're selling yourself. You're telling an employer, you should forget all the other candidates out there that want this job, forget all about them, and hire me. And here's why, right? That's essentially what the process is. And your ability to then say something that resonates with them, is paramount. That's what's important. So first takeaway is that if you are not immediately getting a job, first of all, you're not alone. No matter how valuable or talented people are, it usually takes them a while. And the big determinant of how long it takes them to find another job when they're between jobs is how familiar they are with this process, which is essentially the sales process. Right? So there could be a huge disconnect. You get very talented people that are unemployed for a very long time because they can't sell themselves. They can't communicate their value to the right people who would recognize their value. And sometimes it's not obvious. You know, you get companies that post jobs and they purport to look for the most talented person around, but that's not actually what they're looking for. Oh, sure, they say they're looking for the best person around, but that's not true. They're actually looking for someone who's okay, but has other things, like they'll work for very, very cheap, or they'll be exploited and not complain and stick around, or they're very gullible and they can be lied to, and that candidate will believe them. You know, so there's different things, or there could be political things they're looking for, right? And you just walk right into that, unaware of what agenda they have, because how could you be aware of it, right? So this is the thing, right? This is what you're walking into. Now, that sounds all very pessimistic, but it's actually good news, because there's the great thing about this is that there's many different methods of doing this. I'd highly recommend to everyone, you don't just do one method. So don't just apply for posted jobs. Do other things, okay? Usually they involve some form of networking, right? And just so everyone knows, if you're an introvert, you can do networking every bit as good as anyone else, and you don't need to know a single solitary person to do networking if you do things like outreach, right? Very simple, sending a template message to certain people. So I'm sorry to hear that, Mohammed, but it sounds like you're a talented person. You've got some skills that people can use today. It's just a matter of finding the right fit. Out there's an employer that's looking for what you have. They're right here. You're over here with trying to sell what you have. There's just no connection between you guys yet. You've got to find that connection, because they're out there. They're looking for you, right? If there's one message I have, it's to people in general. And most people in general that visit my YouTube channel, a lot of them are younger people that have less experience at this. The one thing I could tell them, if I could tell them one thing, is there's more to getting hired than just responding to job ads, okay? A lot more. In fact, responding to job ads is one of the worst methods to get hired, because for several reasons. If you wish, you could let me know about what you're dealing with and what's going on with you, Mohammed. Joseph says, had 2 interviews on back-to-back days. got the offer from the one where I enjoyed the interview more and was more keen on the role. And I think that came off on the day, rejected from the other. Okay. Yeah, that tends to go like that, I think, in a very general sense. If you had a good feeling about the interview, if you had a good feeling about the interview, all things being equal, you have a higher chance of it working out, right? That's because one of the things that people in general look for in a job interview is how it feels to interact with you. And if it feels awkward and forced and unpleasant, then people are more likely to conclude that, well, we'd rather work with someone else, right? If it feels easy and it flows and you guys click together, people tend to walk away from that thinking like, wow, you could be the candidate. Because of all the people that they bring in for an interview, all of which are qualified to do the job on paper, okay? So competing by who's more qualified doesn't really work, especially when you're talking to a recruiter. They don't give that impression. They give the impression they're always looking for the most qualified person, and that's often not the case. They're looking for someone who is qualified, but not necessarily they're going to pick the most qualified. What they care about more than that is what you're like as a person. Do you click? Do you fit? Right? You could have the right credentials and the right experience, but if you're just completely out to lunch on a personal level, as far as they're concerned, they're not going to choose you. So all that touchy-feely, like charisma type stuff is important. It's very important. It's often the tiebreaker. You're welcome, Mohammed. I wish you all the luck in the world. Finding a job and getting hired is a skill like any other. It is a skill independent of your qualifications in whatever industry you're in. Okay? So especially for people in operations, people who don't work in marketing or sales, or any other type of activity where you're dealing with people all day long, you guys are probably going to have more of a challenge because this is a people-related process, unfortunately. Yes, you have to be qualified, but the reality is that they have a lot of candidates that are qualified. What they do is they bring in the first group of qualified candidates in for interviews. So the first 6 or 8 that are qualified on paper, they'll probably bring those people in for the first round of interviews. And usually that's all you need to bring in, because one of those people will be chosen, right? They are qualified, yes, but beyond that, they have all the soft skills. They fit in with the culture there. Culture just means how they do things there. That's all it means. The way that organization does things, right? Their habits, their expectations, what's normal for them. That's all that culture means, right? So that's the deal. Joseph says, would like to thank you for your help and advice as well beforehand. Oh, well, thank you very much. Now, did I really address you? I don't know if I read your thing here. Okay, I think I came more off on the day. Yeah, so we sort of talked about it. You just said did you get the offer? Had 2 interviews. Why can't I figure this out? Where I enjoyed the interview. You enjoyed the interview more, keen on the role. Okay. It seems like the first interview that you had a good feeling about, it seemed like the process was ongoing, right? So that's good. Yeah, that stuff is very important. Being likable in job interviews is very important. It's probably the most important thing. The problem is that a lot of people, when they're new to this, they get the wrong impression. They get the impression that the job interview is about qualifications, right? It really isn't. Even though a lot of the questions that they ask you, they speak to your qualifications, your education, your experience, and your skills, right? That's what they'll talk to you about. But really what they're assessing you on is, your soft skills, how it feels to communicate with you. Can you communicate professionally, first of all, like if you're dropping F-bombs in the interview and stuff like that, usually that's a deal breaker, right? The language you're using. And then are you being clear when you explain something? Do they understand clearly what you're saying? And when they ask you a question, do you understand the question? Sometimes they ask a question and then the candidate misunderstands the question and starts answering a different question, right? Something may be related, but it's not what they asked, right? So that speaks to communication skills, right? Then the whole like charisma and that sort of element, do they enjoy interacting with you? Because if it feels really weird and bad, that's going to, they interpret that to be a preview of what it's going to be like working with you, right? So if the first time they have to like talk to you and it's a very formal thing, like a job interview, and it feels weird and awkward and forced, and they didn't like it, and they couldn't wait for the interview to be over, that doesn't bode well, you know what I mean? Because they're assuming that that's what you're going to be like on the job, but worse because, there's nothing at stake, right? You're already hired and, so you can keep it real a bit more, right? So that's why, that's why that stuff plays out the way it does. That's why, if you go to a job interview and you're worried that they might ask you a question that you don't know the answer to, right? That's why it's good to practice, like I always recommend people do mock interviews, right? In a mock interview, it's good to practice being asked something that you don't know how to answer so that you do it in a positive way. Listen, if you don't know the answer, there's a sort of very awkward and unpleasant way to reveal that. There's also a more easygoing, friendly way to reveal that, and all things being equal, you would want to employ the friendlier way of revealing that you don't know. It's like, I'm sorry, I honestly don't know the answer to that. It could have something to do with this, it could have something to do with that, but to be honest with you, I don't have an answer for you right now on that, and kind of just laugh it off a little bit. And people, all things being equal, people will appreciate that more than it being this horrible, unpleasant, awkward kind of situation where they see you squirming and they start to feel bad for you, So that stuff does matter. The likability thing does matter. And by the way, you should have a basic idea of what to do if that ever happens to you. If you have to say something, a good general rule is to fall back on the job requirements. If they ask you about you, something about you, like do you have this or have you done this or something like that, it's about you, just fall back on the job requirements. So if you know that in the job posting they said we're looking for someone who's got this, and someone who's got this experience, and someone who's got these skills, something like that. Just fall back on saying that you have those. Presumably you do have them, so say them. It's like, well, I've got this, and that's taught me to do this. Even if that doesn't directly answer what they're asking for, at least you're saying something that they're wanting to hear, right? Joseph says, yes, I got the offer from the first one. Good. That's great to hear. Man, I am coming down with a cold or a flu or something. It started during my live stream on Wednesday. I noticed I was starting to get a bit stuffed up. And I took like some medication like less than an hour before the start of this live stream, thinking I'd be okay. But it seems to be wearing off because I've got a blocked nose again. But that's okay because we're going to keep going. Yeah, get in the chat. This is primarily an interactive live stream. I don't have an agenda of what to say. I don't have a plan on what to say. I am just reacting to you guys. So if you have questions, ask them, and I'll do my best to answer them. If you have stories of what you're dealing with right now or some recent developments in your job search, whether it's going well or not so well, get in the chat, share that stuff. Let's talk about it. If you're wondering if other people are having the similar experiences or not. We can talk about that. Yeah, there's, while we're waiting for someone to ask a question, there's, like I was saying before, there's many different ways to get a job. We talked about applying for job postings, applying in person, networking with recruiters, which I don't recommend, direct outreach on social media. That's like finding companies and contacting them directly, contacting the individuals that are appropriate to contact, that would want to hear from you, not the recruiter, but the actual hiring managers and people above, people that are always on the lookout for talent and people that are jazzed, that are enthusiastic about working for them. They're always on the lookout for that. I've done a video that's linked in the description box under this live stream called, what's it called? It's called How Successful People Get Jobs. Follow that link, and that whole video, it's one of my videos. You don't see my face. What you see is the desktop of my computer as I take you through Google Maps and LinkedIn and how you do this process. So if that's of any use for you, check out that video. I did that. It might not be the most exciting thing ever, apparently, judging by the fact that it hasn't gotten that many views. But as far as I'm concerned, it's gold. It's using those techniques that I built up a consulting business, for example, using that exact technique to get clients, right? So I highly recommend it. Nita says, what's wrong with working with recruiters? Well, some recruiters are absolutely fantastic and they can help you. However, most of them, I have various problems with them. First of all, recruiter is an entry-level position. So you're working with people that really aren't experts on any of this. And the problem is that there's a couple of problems. First of all, because a lot of them don't really have a background in what they're doing, namely spotting talent, they're not very good at it. It takes the most highly trained people to try and spot talent, and even then, we have a terrible track record of doing it. It's a very, very, we're raising the bar really hard on trying to spot good people before you actually work with them. The second thing is that recruiters are placed under a lot of constraints. They're asked to essentially try and get to know candidates without getting to know them. They don't want to put the time in necessary to get to know candidates. This is because they don't have enough time. Time is money. They don't have enough time to spend on individual candidates very much. You might have a few minutes here and there before the job interview. You can maybe return a couple of messages, if that, and then you have to keep moving on. The other thing is that they're also very overworked. And that's only increasing as we go into the future. They're asked to fill multiple positions at once. Each position is getting hundreds and hundreds of candidates. They're trying to sort through all this. As a result, they can't do a very good job. So if you reach out to those people, they're usually so overworked that they can't really give you much attention. The other thing is that because this is an entry-level position, you do get people in there that really don't understand professional codes of conduct. They talk to people, they're disrespectful, they're rude, they don't understand etiquette. This is not the end of the world, it's not some big conspiracy, but that's what we see, and it's because we have very young people in these entry-level jobs. And, technically, when you think about it, responding to candidates with individual messages and phone calls and things, that's not a value-added part of their job. They don't need to do that to do their job. That's like a distraction almost, right? So as a result, they're very unresponsive in general. And, so their role has been really limited in the last 30 years. It's been really limited to the most absolute basic sort of initial filtering, usually. That's what recruiters are for. And then beyond that point, it's usually the hiring manager that takes the lead on who they're going to pick. That's how these things usually play out. So, I mean, this is a broad generalization. Like, you're going to find exceptions. There are some amazing recruiters out there. I've worked with a few of them. I've hired recruiters. I've worked with them. Excuse me. But there's also a lot of bad ones, as a lot of job seekers can attest to. They're just rude and, they ghost you and like all this kind of stuff. So, sometimes it's not necessarily their fault for everything, but they're just victims of an unfortunate situation. But some of them, they are directly responsible just in the lack of etiquette and manners that they show. The other thing that they're guilty of, that they're not the only ones that are guilty of, is that if you work in one industry and you do one job, they're guilty of that like nearsightedness, where they think that like, this is how I recruit people because my organization recruits people. Therefore, it's the only way that anyone would ever recruit someone. They suffer from that too, which is completely false. Amazed says, I really blew some great opportunities by falling short to sell myself well enough, or maybe they just weren't meant to be. Listen, Amazed, this stuff isn't easy sometimes, and don't beat yourself up too much about it. Sometimes, you're in an interaction with someone and there's like a 2-second opportunity to say something, and then your brain is starting to process, okay, like I really should say this right now. And then the moment passes, and then you miss it, right? It's not your fault, these things happen like that. I'm a technical introvert. I don't have the gift of gab that some people do. I don't have the emotional intelligence that some people do. Some people are just blessed that they can just have these like really, really high level interactions with people, and it goes perfectly. And they're like masters, like an artisan, like crafting this interaction. And I feel like a pawn dealing with people like that. And I can appreciate it for what it is, but by the same token, your talents and skills might be in other areas. You might have like a ton of technical skills that these people don't have. You know what I mean? It's almost like parts of your brain are allocated to either this stuff or other things. And if you're like me, where it seems like only a small part of your brain is dedicated to social interaction and communication skills, you do the best with what you have, but your real talents lie elsewhere. And there's nothing bad about that, As long as you do the best you can, and as long as you learn all you can and make use of your God-given abilities, that's all you can do. You know what I mean? And having been to a lot of job interviews in like the sort of earlier part of my career, I can say that, sometimes it almost feels like a no-win situation. Sometimes you get a person that, for whatever reason, they just want to, blaze right through it, like really quickly. And so you can't get a word in edgeways. You have no opportunity to really speak freely. They control every interaction. They initiate every interaction, and before you have a chance to really ask them a question or anything, they immediately ask you something back. It's very tough in some situations, so don't feel too bad about it. Amaze says, hi Bill, could you advise on how to manage bad vibes during interviews? I think it requires smoking a lot of herbal jazz cigarettes, wearing tie-dye beads, and growing your beard, but not in like a modern way where you grow a beard and you wear a baseball cap. You got to grow your beard, then grow the rest of your hair, Just channel Ringo Starr and you'll be fine. Some recruiters and managers sometimes come off too arrogant or uninterested during an interview. Yeah, I know. And that's kind of what I was referring to. Sometimes it feels like a no-win situation. Listen, you never really know what's going on. For example, they could have interviewed 6 candidates and you're one of the 6. And you're the 6th interview that day that they've done. And the first candidate was pretty damn good. The second one, in their eyes, was amazing. And then after that, they're not really that interested in the third, the fourth, the fifth, and then you. You know what I mean? So you just walked into something, right? And the bar is raised so high, like for you to be able to wow them so much that they're going to forget that second candidate and start getting excited about you. That's a pretty tall order, you know? And then on top of it, the interviewer, whether they're a recruiter or a hiring manager, you know, they could be, it's been a long time since they had any food, like it's been several hours since lunch. They're tired. They've been talking to strangers all day and they don't enjoy talking to strangers. They're probably an introvert like yourself, you know, and they just want to get through this. They want to just get it over with, you know, and it doesn't really give you a fair chance, you know, because that's what you're walking into. And sometimes these people are so unprofessional that they'll really wear that on their sleeve. They'll show you. They'll like let it be known that this is how they feel, you know. And it's very unwelcoming and unprofessional and rude. You know, the first thing you learn for being like, I don't want to say an executive, but anybody that has to interact with people outside of their organization as part of their job is that it doesn't matter what you feel like. It doesn't matter what mood you're in. You have to meet every person and make them feel like you're wanting to talk to them, you're enjoying talking to them, and you're really excited about working together with them. Whether or not you feel it, doesn't matter. You have to put on that face because it's etiquette. It's just good manners. Because if you don't, you get what you've just experienced. How does it feel? It feels like crap, doesn't it? You feel like, you know, disrespected, and then you feel like, why am I even here? Why did you invite me to come talk to you if you're not interested in talking to me? You clearly aren't into this. You know, what the hell am I doing here? Why did you call me down here? You know what I mean? You know, that's what it feels like. And it's a sign of unprofessional people. And I've met a lot of people, and I've met some, you know, like absolute masters of this stuff, way better than me. Like I'm envious of their, you know, interactive capabilities, whatever. Interpersonal skills is what I'm trying to say. You know, and regardless of their true feelings, they made me feel like I was welcome, and they made me feel like I was the most important thing on their agenda that day, you know? And I'm sure that wasn't always the case. I'm sure it wasn't, you know? But that's what a professional person looks like. So how do you handle it? Look, you know, it depends what philosophy you have. Some people think, okay, listen, I'm here. I've taken the trouble to come all the way here. I've like, you know, prepared for this. I'm not just going to like walk out. I'm going to try and do the best I can so I maximize the odds of this turning into something good. Okay? Despite how, you know, disconnected these people seem to be, how they're not into this. And it feels and I feel unwelcome. Other people, they prioritize their own feelings, their own mental health. So if you feel like you're being treated in an undignified fashion and you feel that like, okay, the way to make myself feel good about myself again is to, you know, be rude back to these people or get up and walk out or something like that. Hey, who am I to judge? I wouldn't take that approach unless I was like absolutely angry, you know, but even then you would really try to resist it because it's just not professional. It just isn't. But I can understand people who do that. I'm not judging them for doing that. Sometimes you just got to take care of your mental health, you know? You know, now I don't know if that's any of that is like what you were wanting to hear or what you were looking for. If you're trying to salvage the situation, like if it's feeling very unwelcome, it seems like they're not into it, you can try to pick up the mood a little. It is possible, depending on, you know, how much social skills you have. Sometimes it's possible to do that. You can make a little joke. You can sort of just at least look pleasant, you know, like I'm trying to do now, look approachable, look friendly, you know, and if they're still looking at you like this, you know, then hey, maybe these people just are miserable bastards and there's nothing you can do about it. You know what I mean? You just walked into it. But you can try and, like lighten the mood by doing that. Keeping it a little bit light if possible. If you're a bit of a jokester, you're good at humor, you can crack a joke or something like that. Sometimes that can help to lighten the mood. Other than that, there's really not much you can do. So don't beat yourself up over it. You know what I mean? Job search is a numbers game. You pursue some leads and most of them don't work out, right? But you do it because a minority of the time a lead does, right? And it's nothing that you really orchestrated or crafted. It's just that you walked into a good situation. They just happen to be looking for someone like you. So when you show up, they think you're awesome. It's not that you did anything special. You do the thing you always do at job interviews, but these people take it really well and they like it. Whereas, as opposed to other people that are so damn blind, they can't see the talent. They can't recognize the talent that's sitting across the table from them, right? Amay says, is there a particular time of day or day of the week you would recommend for an interview? Yeah, Friday immediately after lunch. Friday, because generally speaking, people are in a better mood on Fridays. The week is over. All the urgent stuff that they had to do, more of it was taken care of earlier in the week, all the important stuff. And the stuff that's left over for Friday, Friday's a little bit easier of a day. And then on top of that, you got the psychological effect of knowing the weekend is coming. So people are happier. They're like, they're thinking about Friday night. They're thinking about Saturday night. They're thinking about the weekend with their family or whatever, or what they've got coming up. So they're in a better mood. Then I would recommend doing it immediately after lunch because people are just naturally happier when they've just had a break. They've just had a chance to relax. They've had some food. Maybe they've talked to people if they're extroverts, which recharges them. Or they've spent some time alone. If you're an introvert, that recharges you, right? So they come back, they feel like, ready to get back into it. So they're generally in a better mood. So if you have the choice of when to do an interview or something really important, you want it to go well, some kind of personal interaction, interpersonal interaction, pick Friday immediately after lunch. Now, as much as possible. Sometimes you don't know when people take their lunch, right? But that's what I would say. That's what I recommend people. If you have to go talk to your boss about something, about a performance review or about a raise or about how am I doing, or you want to make a suggestion, or anything like that. It's a little bit delicate, right? You do not want to talk to them when it's a bad time, when they're stressed out, when they're they're upset and they're angry and so if you don't know when that is, the odds are Friday immediately after lunch is probably the best time. And there you go. We're at the end of the chat. So I see there's 35 people here. Get in the chat. Let me know what's up. What's going on? Let me know what you think of recruiters. I've worked with some amazing recruiters. But I've also encountered some of the worst pieces of crap that, have ever walked the earth, it feels, in business. I think Genghis Khan and people like that would be worse than recruiters, but what do I know? The perfect network engineer is back, says, good morning, sir. Thank you for helping us all in our job seeking journey and everything. Much appreciate your effective effort to make our work journey better. You're welcome, the perfect network engineer. That's very nice of you to say. Yeah, I do my best. No, I know there's the thing is I don't know, there's two aspects of job search that really, really suck, I think. Number one is kind of what I talked about in a recent video, where it feels like, certainly this was the case with me, and I know it's the case for a lot of other people, you're unprepared. Nobody ever took you aside and explained how this stuff worked, really. Oh, sure, they give you classes on how to do resumes and how to respond to a posted job and all this kind of stuff, but that's not what I'm talking about. Posted jobs, most people do not get hired through posted jobs. There are so many other methods, and the other methods, usually networking, that's how the majority of people end up getting hired, right? Did they ever tell you this in school or in any other place? Did they ever prepare you for it? The way executives get hired, they get executive jobs. Have you ever been exposed to that? Okay, maybe you're not an executive, but maybe you want to be one someday. Wouldn't it be useful to know how you get an executive job? And no, it's not by responding to posted jobs, usually. And when I say usually, I mean like 95% of the time, at least. Wouldn't that be useful? They don't tell you this, This is the number one problem, right? Instead, and no offense to recruiters, but recruiters tell you that the only way you can get a job is to go through a recruiter, which, I understand why. That it's their incentive. It's very hard for them to say, you don't need me, In fact, you should just steer clear of me and everyone like me. It's like, I understand that they can't say that, but they're the ones usually talking about job search. And so they give everyone a very distorted, warped perspective of how this stuff works. I'm not a recruiter. I've had to hire people, and I've hired recruiters, and I've taught recruiters in university, but I'm not a recruiter, and that makes me able to talk about other methods where you don't need to talk to a recruiter. Considering how people are upset with recruiters and how they don't like dealing with them in general. That's what I hear. I get a lot of feedback on this channel about everybody talking about getting ghosted and dealing with unprofessional and rude people, or being lied to, only to get ghosted after that. It's like that's what I constantly hear about. So number one, you're never taught about this process, right? Okay, that's the big issue. So you don't know how it works. And then number two, I think a lot of people's attitudes get in the way. They have, I don't want to come across insulting, but some people have a bit of an arrogant attitude. They think that, okay, I have this degree, or I have this experience, or I have this capability. That's great, but they think that entitles them to a job automatically. Someone should just give them a job because they deserve one. It doesn't work like that. Nobody told them that either along the way. It's like companies are in it to make money. They're in it to make money just like you're in it to make money for survival. They're looking out for themselves, because if they don't get this right, they're all out of jobs. They all lose their income. They all lose their security. It can be ugly. It can be bad. They don't just give their money to you because you ask. They give their money to you in exchange for something they really want. And you have to not only have it, but you've got to be able to communicate that to them. That's where a lot of people on the internet, like technical introvert types like myself, that's where people are missing part of the puzzle. You could have a lot of talent, yeah, but if you can't connect with the people that could use you, and you can't communicate to them what you can do for them in a way that they understand and they believe, then it doesn't work, Like, think of how you might get spam email, okay? Or like whatever spam, somebody trying to sell you something. What do you do with it? You immediately dismiss it and you dismiss it, you usually get a little upset, and then you just dismiss it, and you feel good about like deleting it or hiding it, or or whatever, right? I hate to say it, but that's almost like a candidate, right? Saying, I can do this. I can, if you hire me, I can do this for you. And, the employer might not even be looking for that. Or if they're looking for that, they think, oh yeah, sure. Like everybody says that, but very few people actually have that, right? It's almost like that you're up against, right? So but I mean, you buy things. It's not like people can't sell anything to you, right? You buy a lot of things. You buy food, you buy, your all kinds of things in your daily life. So what is it that persuades you to spend money on those things and not even check out the spam email that you get, right? It's a little bit of that problem. If you understand that, an organization is just like you. They think exactly the same way, okay? And I'm not defending the bad ones. I'm just saying that that's their situation, right? If someone says, hey, I can sell you a can of baked beans, it's like, great. You might like baked beans. You might eat great baked beans. You might spend money on baked beans. But if you're not wanting to buy a can of baked beans at that moment, you'll kind of just dismiss it, You know what I mean? Or instead of talking to the person in your household that shops for groceries, they talk to some other member of the household, a kid, Say, do you want to buy baked? It's like you're talking to the wrong person. If you had spoken to the person that does the grocery shopping, maybe they would have taken you up on that, right? So it's the exact same situation in reverse. You can imagine yourself as an organization, right? Why do you make certain choices over like what you spend money on, but you dismiss others outright? It's kind of like that. You got to talk to the right person at the right time and say the right thing that they're interested in hearing, not what you're interested in saying, right? It's a sales process, and that's what a lot of people haven't been trained on, So that also strikes against you. I see that with a lot of, especially people in IT, because I suspect, I don't know this, but I suspect that a lot of people in IT, they tend not to be salespeople, They're operations people. They're introverts. They're technically minded. They're not people minded. They're not sales oriented, So if companies are lining up to hire any computer science grad or anybody that can do a bit of coding, great. It's a happy time for them. And they tend to get very arrogant about it. I've noticed that in the past. But when that boom cycle is over and there's a bit of a bust cycle and nobody's hiring, or at least not officially, then they have absolutely no idea what to do. And this is where you need some of that knowledge. Okay, let's get back to you guys here after my big, long trip to nowhere. CRS says, I get so far in the interview process, then they find out I'm over 50, then crickets. Yeah, the only thing I know for the ageism against old people thing is to talk to people that are themselves over 50. And that's usually a way to get around that, or just networking. They want to hire you because they've got a taste of you, like how professional you are, how attentive you are, how much initiative you have, how enthusiastic you are, and they've already met you. So, you know what I mean? And usually if you go to people higher up in the organization who have the power to hire you or to influence people in the organization, they're usually older, right? So among the executives, being 50 usually isn't a problem. And this is the thing that bugs me also, because in this day and age, everybody's shouting about diversity. And it's like what I've always advocated for is diversity of skill sets. A company entirely run by accountants usually doesn't do very well. A company entirely run by engineers usually doesn't do very well. A company entirely run by salespeople doesn't do very well in the long term. None of these work in the long term. What they found, and they have data on this, a lot of data, and people with PhDs in business have studied this for many years, is that if you have a diversity of skill sets, like you have some accountants, you have some salespeople, you have some operations people, you have some lawyers, you have some HR people, you have some innovation type people. You put them all together, and if you can make them work together, that's usually the key to tremendous success, right? And part of that is also the age thing. So a company that's made up entirely of 60-year-olds probably won't do very well, but neither will a company that's made up entirely of 21-year-olds. Usually if you get that mix of different perspectives in there, if you can get them to work together, and that's a big if, then you can really knock it out of the park. That's what leads to success. This has been well studied, So it's really annoying how at least the official hiring process, where you go through recruiters in response to job ads, is that there's things like ageism and stuff, especially after people spent the last nearly 10 years shouting about various types of diversity. But it's only certain types of diversity that they seem to care about. Sexual orientation, ethnicity, religious affiliation, things like this, all that. But they ignore the other types officially. That's not part of the whole thing, and that's what bugs me. Because these things are more well known to have an effect on businesses' performance. So that's all I can say. All I know, CRS, I really don't understand. I'm not an authority in the ageism thing. I'm not like a human rights expert or a lawyer or anyone like that. But all I know is that if you try and seek out and talk to people who are over 50 themselves, they won't hold that against you. Okay? That's usually how that works in my experience. And you can do this if you're reaching out to organizations. Check out that video that's linked down that I mentioned earlier. It's called How Successful People Get Jobs, where you could reach out to individuals. You can see the individual. You can see their photo, like their headshot on LinkedIn. So is this person 21? But this other person who's the manager of the entire department, they look like they're 70. It's like, I don't think they'd hold it against you that you're 50. So maybe that would be the person to talk to. Bianca Rose Lopez says, I feel sad after my second interview. I was not selected. I thought my experience aligned with the job position. I'm sure it did. Bianca or Blanca. Listen, a lot of times the reason you don't get selected is simply this. There's one position and 6 candidates. All 6 could be fully qualified. They usually are. All 6 could be awesome. But unfortunately, you got to send 5 home with a no. So don't read into it that I'm no good in some way. You know what I mean? Don't take the rejection to mean that. Because if you could actually discover what was going on the other side of the table and what people were thinking, 99% of the time, it's not because of that. It's not because you're not good in this or, you don't have something critical. It's just that they've got to make a choice. Sometimes it comes down to a figurative roll of the dice, So just assume that was the case, because I'm sure it was. It's disappointing. I get it. I totally get it. There's nothing I can say that will make you feel happy and okay about everything. But just keep that in the back of your mind. It's a game of random chance. You just happen to have what they just happen to be looking for. It's nothing that you can control. And then beyond that, even if you have everything, if other people have it too, then it's just random chance on which one they select. It turns out that they might select the other candidate over you because they wore orange that day, and that just happens to be the hiring manager's favorite color. So there you go. You know what I mean? It's nothing that you should feel bad about. There's nothing inferior about you. Okay, so always have that attitude, because that's usually what's going on. Melissa says, I'm currently looking for work, and I've been asked why my previous roles have been 6 months, 10 months, and so on. I've explained majority of these roles were contract or fixed term. Is that okay? I think so. Now listen, if you could perhaps indicate that slightly more clearly on the resume, I don't think that would hurt. So it wouldn't raise the question in their mind. You could say contract work 6-month term or something like that. And then it shows that you were there 6 months. Contract work, 10-month term. And then you were there for 10 months, something like that. And then they look at it and they go, oh, okay, that makes sense, There's some weird thing with recruiters. I remember encountering this years ago, and I remember it struck me as just abjectly stupid, where they would look at your resume and they would come to a conclusion. They would say, oh, it looks like, you have more of this. You're more this than that, right? And I would say, like, no. You might have understandably come to that conclusion because on my resume, I chose to list quantifiable accomplishments. And there's more of those in this role than in that role. So, like, that's why it seems like I've written more about that. But I assure you, I have equal experience in both or something like that. But then they kind of look at you like, and they go, I don't know, that's not what this paper says. It's like, hello, buddy, I wrote the paper. You know what I mean? I can rewrite it any way I want, So don't tell me that, like, the paper is an authority over what I'm telling you. You know what I mean? I remember being in that situation. I can't remember the details. I can't remember what it was about, but I remember that coming up a couple of times, You know what I mean? Like, if you put it down on your resume, it's valid. But if it's something you've done that you haven't featured prominently on your resume, or you didn't explicitly mention that particular duty or something like that, it's almost like the recruiter doesn't believe you when you say you have it or something like that. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know what you call that syndrome or that bias, but that's a real thing. So if you can make that clear, Melissa, on your resume, that might avoid some of the questions and therefore the doubt, that they're casting on this. Oh man, I'm coming down with definitely a flu or something. I've got a completely blocked nose. That medication is not what it's cracked up to be. Melissa says, how does someone who has a senior role, I'm going to move this down here. How does someone who has had senior roles, project and program manager, go to a less senior to have a less stressful role? How do I explain this in interviews when asked in my resume and cover letter? I don't know, Melissa. I've never succeeded at that. I don't think it is possible, personally, to explain to a recruiter that that's a thing. Because it will always come across negative. It'll always come across like, oh, I guess you couldn't hack doing the senior role, so now you're coming down. No, that because it says something negative about you. You see, recruiters are trained. What recruiters are looking for is they're not looking for the best candidate. That like they try to project this image of, like, we're always looking for the best person. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for the least risky candidate, right? And they've taken that to a ridiculous degree, right? So, for example, if you have a work gap on your resume, in their eyes, that makes you a risky candidate, because what they can see is that for a period of time, you weren't employed. Now, they know that they'll never really know the real reason for that. They could ask you about it, you could say a thing, but they have no way of really verifying that that's actually true. So what they do is they say, okay, there's a work gap. We know that they weren't employed. Maybe there's a reason why. Maybe they're a bad employee. Maybe they got tremendous personal problems, or they have attitude problems, or they've got a real work ethic problem, or something like that, that we don't know about, that we can't detect in this sort of superficial examination we're doing. So we're just going to assume that you're a riskier candidate. If we hire you, there's a higher likelihood, in our opinion, that you won't work out, right? Because you have something questionable in your background, right? This is how recruiters think. This is how they're trained to think. Okay, I taught recruiters. I know this. This is how they think. They know that there's a lot of uncertainty around this process. They don't really know if you're lying through your teeth. right to their face in about everything in a job interview. They have no way of really knowing. Yes, they could do some background checks and stuff at the end, but it doesn't really get everything, and it certainly can't verify things like work gaps easily, right? So this is another one. If you had a senior position, but now you're wanting to come down, that raises some red flags. Like, that's not normally what people do. Usually they want to go up. What's the problem? Did you not work out in the senior role? Were you promoted above your ability? This kind of thing. And so they naturally go to the worst case scenario and they say, okay, well, this person, maybe there's issues with them. They can't get a position appropriate for them. If they've been at that level, they should get another equal level. They're not going for that. They're going for something low. So like, what's going on? That also messes up with your salary expectations and stuff like that. They might assume that, wait a minute, you've been in a senior role, but now you're coming down. So you will automatically want the absolute top of the range for this job because you have all this senior experience, right? They'll make all kinds of assumptions like that. It all amounts to the same thing. They regard you as riskier because of it, because of this situation. Now, you and I both know that there could be a totally legitimate situation where you would do this. There's nothing risky about you. There's nothing nefarious. There's nothing bad. It's just, you would prefer to have a slightly easier, more manageable job than pushing yourself right to your limit and working yourself to the bone, which you have done, but you've decided, you know what, I'd rather take less pay and take a slightly easier job than do that kind of work. I just prefer this. We all know that that's a legitimate thing and that a lot of people want that. So in the same way that we all know that there are legitimate reasons for a work gap. You could take time off to deal with a sick family member. You could take time off to raise a family. I mean, you could take time off to backpack around the world or whatever the hell. We all know this. The problem is that the way recruiters are trained to hire people, these situations don't fit into what they're looking for, right? Same with changing careers. You want to change careers? Almost impossible if you're going through a recruiter. Because the first question they're going to ask you is, this job that you're going to, how many years of experience do you have doing it? And you have to say, well, 0. Because I'm changing careers. I've never done that before. And they say, okay, so 0 years of experience. So how do you expect to know how to do the job if you've never done it before? So no dice, right? So does that mean that people can't change careers? Of course not. It's just that they do it different ways. They don't go through a recruiter by answering a job ad. Instead, they go the networking route. They talk to the hiring manager. They say, listen, here's my deal. Did this for 20 years, was really good at it, made a lot of money. It taught me that this is the aspect of the job I like, this is the aspect of a job I don't like. But I've always had a hobby all through this, since I was a kid, of doing this. And I'd very much like to do that, And that's why I'm here. I've got some skills in these different areas, and I've got a passion for this type of thing. Can you give me a chance? And a lot of times the hiring manager will say, listen, we've got a temporary thing coming up, like a sort of part-time, temporary, or trial type position, contract position. You know what? I'll give you a chance. You seem like speaking to you, you seem like you could do it. And certainly you've got a lot of skills on your resume, a lot of transferable stuff, So yeah, you seem to know the subject matter. You said it's been a hobby, so sure, I'll give you a chance. And then you get your foot in the door. You take the contract work or the part-time thing. And then a little bit later, as soon as a full-time position opens up, bam, you apply for it. You have the advantage of, these people. They've worked with you before. They know that you're awesome. They know that you know your stuff. You're the lead candidate for the permanent position when it opens up. That's how people change careers. That's a very common thing, right? So Melissa, all that big, long sob story to say this. You have something, you're in a very legitimate situation. The solution for you might not be going through recruiters. You should try the networking approach for this. It's almost akin to changing careers. In a way, in a sense. So learn about that. Check out that video I have that I've mentioned twice so far in this live stream. It's in the description box below this live stream. There's a link to it. It's one of my videos. It's called How Successful People Get Jobs. Check out that video. See if that gives you some ideas of, what direction you can go in. And if you want the full deal, I put it all, how to do all that stuff is all in this course, if you want to go down that route. Julia says, how do you meet a recruiter, Bill? My recruiters were either the HR department or the direct boss or both. Okay, well, first of all, the recruiter will not be the direct boss unless you want to work in the HR department as a recruiter, Maybe then your boss will be the senior recruiter, right? That's the only time the recruiter would be the boss. What you might be thinking of possibly is the hiring manager. The hiring manager is, if they post a position, they're looking for a technician, right? The technician reports to the senior technician, right? Well, the senior technician would be the hiring manager because they're the boss of the person that's getting hired, right? So usually in the job interviews, to select who's going to be the new technician, the senior technician will be there and they'll usually have final say of who's hired, right? Now, my first question to you, Julia, would be why would you want to meet a recruiter? Usually they're not down with that because they don't, it's a distraction. It's not part of their job. They don't need to meet you. They just tell you, yes, can you come into an interview this Friday at 2 here? Okay, great. They don't need to talk to you in person. You know what I mean? Okay, but if you want to have an informational interview with the recruiter, if you know how to get an informational interview, learn about that. That's where you have an interview with somebody, a meeting with somebody, but you're not there to look for a job. You're there to get information, to ask them a series of questions and get answers, right? So it sounds like that's what you might be wanting to do. Learn about that. You reach out to them and you've got to be very clear, I'm not looking for a job. I'd just like to talk to you for half an hour if I possibly could. I have a few questions about your industry and this kind of stuff. And I'm wondering if I could get your expert opinion on some of the stuff. It's harder reaching out to recruiters because recruiters are like salespeople, but salespeople are generally friendlier. Recruiters deal with a lot of people, just like salespeople, but they seem to be neither friendly nor do they have a love of interacting with people for some reason. So I'm not sure. On YouTube, there's a lot of YouTube channels I noticed that are run by recruiters or former recruiters, if you want to talk to them about how that stuff works. Amaze says, what are some ways to show charisma during a virtual interview? The most important way is to smile. I've done a video on this. Go check out my video on, I can't remember the title, but it's on this stuff. It's how to boost your social skills and stuff like that. Number one thing is to look friendly. If you're on camera and you're kind of that's how you look. And, when you talk, it's very forced and uncomfortable and awkward and, this kind of stuff. Right? It doesn't matter what you say at that point. Already there's many strikes against you. But if you're just, you look approachable, you look happy, you kind of have a bit of a smile. I don't know if you call this a smile, Is this a smile? It's more of a grin, but not in a weird way, You just look approachable. You look like you're in a good mood. You look like you're easy to talk to. And when they say something to you, you seem happy, Now, I'm sure you're not happy. You're probably in living hell, right? You're probably so uncomfortable, and you just want the whole thing to end and you want to run screaming out of the room. You want to be that person, that runs into the sea, arms flailing, scattering their clothes as they go, they go into the sea and then you don't see them again, That would not surprise me. You probably don't feel very comfortable or friendly or happy at that moment, but you wear a mask. You force yourself to look pleasant and friendly and approachable. And if they ask you something, you answer in a pleasant way. If they say, can you tell me about this? You say, sure. Not a problem. Not a problem. I would love to tell you about that, right? And then people end up liking you, generally speaking. It's stupid, but it's true. This is just how stupid humans are, It starts with that. So don't dismiss that. Don't dismiss when someone says, just smile, that really is a major, major thing, And then, then it kind of starts to matter what you say. Don't pick a fight with them. Don't disagree with them. Don't appear offended over, every little thing. Just, easygoing, friendly, happy. If you don't feel it, which you won't, fake it. And it'll make a tremendous difference. And it's not so nefarious because if you fake it a little bit, generally people then tend to reciprocate. They tend to if they started the interview and they're kind of like this, they tend to, kind of just ease up a little, okay, kind of unclench. Inanis, is that how you say that? I always thought that was Alanis, Alanis Morissette, if anyone remembers her. Cognitive diversity is important. Yeah, depends what you mean by that. But yeah, if you have all kinds of people thinking the same, usually that does not lead to success. And just so everyone knows, this is not my opinion. This is the result of years of research involving tons of data on this stuff. They found that it was important for profitability long term that you get many different types of people working together. The challenge, of course, is that then you have to have really, really good interpersonal communication skills and collaboration skills and interaction skills in order to make that work. And most people don't have that. That's the catch, right? That no one ever talks about. Yeah, you want all these different types of people, but yeah, you get them all together, they all squabble and they all hate each other. And then they go, well, as you can see, diversity is not working, Whose idea was it to hire accountants and salespeople and have them all work together? It's no, it's not a bad idea. Just that then you have to be able to get these people to collaborate, And especially at lower levels, that can be a challenge. Mehmet says, how do you think the analytics will be affected by AI? What analytics? What are we talking about? Analytics field. Oh, okay. I didn't know that was a field. Is that part of IT you're talking about? Because in every industry you have some type of analytics, you're looking at business intelligence and you're looking at other things, Obviously you have a lot of that in engineering type stuff too, So I don't know if that's its own field. I mean, I guess it could be, I suppose, but it's splintered into many different applications. I don't know. I mean, do I have a crystal ball? No. I think that AI is an incredible tool, but it's still a tool, And to make a long story short, because I'll spare you guys the rant like I did last time, but I mean, in the course of my life, I've seen several truly disruptive technologies come through, And each time, everybody, there was always some people that were they figured it was the end of days. It's this is the thing that just finally wipes us out. They said that about the internet, when that first came, because that was truly disruptive. Whether you wanted the internet to be there or not, it was there, and it changed everything. They said that about the web 2.0, social networking, how now you can publish your stuff, your thoughts, so that millions of people can see it, without going through any kind of gatekeeper, really, in a traditional sense. They thought that would be the end of the world. And it was for a couple of industries, music and bookstores and things like that, and a few others, But in the same way that the automobile put the horse and cart out of business, you know what I mean? It was a tremendously positive thing overall. And that's what AI is, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it's a tremendously useful tool, but it's still a tool. I mean, I'm an engineer type, so I'm all for it. And it is going to change. People that did stuff manually that AI could do, you're going to have to change. That's just the reality of it, whether you want to or not. And this stuff always happens. Every 10, 20 years, there's always something that rolls through and it upsets everybody's cozy little world, but it's a good thing. Ultimately, there's a bit of frictional, kerfuffle there, but it's ultimately a good thing. The best thing you could do if you work in analytics, I would imagine, is to embrace it. So understand it. So if you know what it can do, then you can use it to help you. And if you know what it can't do, then you could specialize in doing that stuff that it can't do. So you're still important and you still can contribute, For everything that it can do, you're using it as a tool and you're working way quicker. And for everything it can't do, that's where you come in. That's where the thinking skills come in. Because it can't think. It's just a fancy version of autocomplete. That's all it is. If you just want something generic and mediocre, bam, you got it. It's simpler and more convenient than ever before. But if you want something truly original and amazing, it can't do that, certainly not yet. Where did I leave off here? Amaze says, thank you for all the encouragement, Bill. The job market can be so cold, especially dealing with continued rejections. However, somehow it works out well eventually. Yeah. I've probably said this to you a million times, but check out the networking stuff. That's really where it is. That's where you have the edge. Because if the company posts a job, 1,000 people apply to it. Now, if you can go head to head with 1,000 people and win, hey, all the more power to you. Most people can't. But if you're the only one that reached out and contacted them and maybe went in for an informational interview or something like that, you're the only one that showed up. The only one. What does that say about you? Who would you hire? Assuming you're qualified to do this job, who would you hire? You'd hire that person. It's as simple. What do recruiters always claim they're looking for? They're looking for someone who's enthusiastic, who's passionate about the role, and genuinely wants to do a good job and genuinely wants to do this kind of work. Well, that person just walked into the boss's office, and that person was you, right? So check out the networking stuff. That's where this stuff, it's the tiebreaker. It's the solution to a lot of the problems with this official process, the official process that most people don't get hired by the way. Anybody who wants to change careers, anybody who's got a work gap, anybody that's got something a little bit non-standard, like a generalist, or who is it? Was it Melissa? Somebody that's been you kind of went up, but then you decided you don't really like being that high, so you want to come down here. It's a little bit non-standard. It's the solution for all those types of problems, because you can talk to someone as a human being, you can explain your situation, and they get to know you, and it's up to them whether they buy it, whether they believe your story. But they're more likely to believe a story coming from a person, than a recruiter. That's for damn sure. Let's see here. Fourth Dimension says, the issue with this content is if you watch too much, you view the job market from a place of desperation versus a place of empowerment. Stay positive at all costs. Okay, I don't know if that's an issue with this content, but whatever. Julia says, I was thinking about a hiring company that advertised a vacancy. Okay, so Julia, you were, how do you mean a recruiter? Okay. The recruiters were either, my microphone isn't pointing towards my face. Let's see here. If I point the microphone directly into my gut, will that give you guys the gist of what I'm saying? I don't know if how that would come out. I was thinking about hiring a company that advertised a vacancy. So you want to speak to the recruiter. You want to meet the recruiter. Yeah, okay. Well, listen. Like I kind of said at the very beginning of this live stream, I don't recommend networking with recruiters. So if you want to do that anyway, and you're asking me how to do it, I mean, it's a tough one. You could, apart from contacting them and just being persistent. But you see, the thing, like I said, is that most recruiters, they're dealing with many, many people every day. They've got many positions to fill at any one time. At each position, they're dealing with hundreds of applicants, you know, if they're posted online. So they're dealing with a lot of people. So like somebody wanting to meet them and talk to them, they may not jump on that because it's not necessary for them to do their job. And, you know, they can see what you're trying to do. You're trying to get some points, right, by having a closer connection with them. And they can see that. And that's actively working against what they see their role as, which is to be objective and put everyone on a level playing field and pick the best candidate. You know, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's why there's a couple of strikes against you. So I'm not sure what the best way to do that is. That's usually not the best way to get a job. You know, if you're going to network with anyone, network with the hiring managers or people above, right? They're the ones that have the power to hire you and to, you know, influence people at the company to hire you. SJ's Redemption says, I have challenges introducing myself to others. How do I overcome this? What's a proper introduction? I've only done a handful of shorts on this channel. One of them was like how to introduce yourself. I've got another full-length video talking about that. Obviously, it changes based on the context, right? So if you're introducing yourself to a room full of people, you know, my name is Bill. Hi, Bill. You know, like that kind of thing. It's going to be different from like if you're meeting like a potential business contact or something like that. Generally, the best way to do it is to first say your name, then say your tagline. Like, what is it that you do? You know, so your tagline could be, I'm a student, or I'm a fully qualified structural engineer, or, you know, I'm an aspiring microbiologist, you know, something like that. Like, whatever your tagline is. If you look at LinkedIn has, like, on everybody's account, on everybody's profile, you got a name, and then immediately under the name, you got a tagline. It's like an extra field where you say who you are, right? So the question is, who do you want to be to these people? Do you want to be a student? Because let's say you're a student. Do you want to be an aspiring, you know, fill in the blank, like professional of some kind, HR professional? You know what I mean? Who do you want to be to them? Figure that out in advance, right? Because then you say your tagline. Right? My name is Bill. I'm a management consultant. I also have a YouTube channel. You know, something like that. I'm a former CEO. Right? That's my tagline. And I could change that. Like I went to a CEO conference, so I'd say, hi, I'm Bill. I'm a former CEO. Right? I wouldn't say I'm a YouTuber because that's not who I want to be to them. Right? But if I hypothetically went to some kind of YouTube convention or something like that, then I would say, hi, I'm Bill. I'm a YouTuber known as the company's expert. You know, that's my tagline, right? So you say your name, you say your tagline, and normally that's enough. The rest is going to vary depending on the context, like who you're meeting, you know? You could say your goal, or you could say, you know, what you're hoping to get out of it. If it's a job interview, you know, and then they say, please introduce yourself, you could say something like, hi, my name is Bill. I'm a YouTuber. My handle is the company's expert, and I'm here today to interview for this particular position. I'm really hoping you'll select me. You know, something like that. You could go into more about what you have, you know, if you want to. But usually that's pretty good. And then you shake someone's hand. But check out my short on that. I have a short and I've got a full-length video. That'll give you a bit more sophisticated sort of an answer. Bob, analytics equals data science. Okay. So is that difference from, but what I'm saying is that different from IT? Or is that different from statistics, right? I just don't know where you draw the line here. You're asking me about the future of it, but, yeah, I know it's a big thing now. It's always been a big thing, really. It's just that they're tying new technology to it now. Thank you so much. You're welcome. Mehmet. Luvuyo Gab. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. How do you know if you have done job task to your level best? In other words, how do you measure whether you have performed efficiently in the given task or work? What is the reasoning behind this question? What does that mean? Like, how do you know if you've done your best? Well, if you don't know, how would I know? Like, look, in order to know, like generally speaking here, if someone said like, okay, your performance as a manager, how do you know you've done a good job, or something like that? The obvious answer is to compare it to what's typical in that industry, right? So it's like if we look at how managers normally perform in this role and some of the metrics that they use to assess their performance, this might be the range, and usually 2 or 3 metrics. This might be the range. I'm kind of somewhere in here. This might be the range. I'm somewhere in here. This might be the range. I'm somewhere in there. It's hard to argue that you didn't do a good job or you didn't do your best or something. If you could produce that kind of result, right? Nobody can show evidence that, you're not doing a good job if your performance is in line with the average or it's superior to the average, Now, if you're asking, like, how do you know if you did your best? Like, if technically, could you have done better if you had tried harder? I think that's unanswerable. It's based on your feeling, right? I've tried my hand at many things. I've had a couple of things in my life that I've like really tried my best. I've like almost put myself in the hospital because I tried so hard, in terms of, long bouts of work or stress or strain or, just reaching the physical limits of your endurance for like working hard or, whatever. I've done that a couple of times in my life. So I'm comparing it to that. And I know that I'm really approaching my limit on this one. I don't know how you'd be able to answer that in any other way. I don't know if that helps. Julia says, thank you for the answers, Bill. I was wondering where to find the vacancies as they weren't there so far. Okay, now you're the one that's wanting to talk to a recruiter. Okay, well, listen, here's the deal. Okay. There are a lot of vacancies out there in the world, okay? And we're talking about for employees here. About 20% of them are posted. So all the job postings you see, that's about 20% of all the actual jobs there are. The other 80 exist in the sense that they're going to hire someone, but they haven't posted the job publicly. So, you can't discover it with like an internet job search. Okay. Now we see this all the time. Okay. Think of like the local gas station or the local mom and pop shop. Like think of like working at the Gap at the mall or something like that. They may not let's say they wanted another salesperson to work at the Gap or whatever. And you go on Indeed and you do a search for your hometown, like all the jobs, and you probably won't find that. Because maybe what they've done is they've taken like a sort of help wanted sign and stuck it in the window. And that's all they've done. So potential candidates would walk through the front door of the store. They walk into the store, they go to the counter and they say, yeah, hi, could I talk to the manager on duty, please? And then the manager comes up, they say, yes, may I help you? And you say, I noticed you had a help wanted sign in the window. What's the position? They say, well, it's for a sales associate. And you say, okay, well, listen, I'm a great sales associate. Here's a copy of my resume. Here's my card with my phone number on it. Listen, I'm prepared to do an interview now or whenever is convenient for you. I'd very much like to work here. I'm a fan of the Gap. I buy all my clothes here, and I know all your products, and I'm reliable, and I'm enthusiastic. So if you're looking for someone, I hope you'll consider me. Something like that. And they say, okay, well, thank you very much. They'll take the person into the back, give them like a quick interview, and like, okay, you're hired. Something like that. Like, that's an example of a hidden job. It's not posted, right? You can't discover that by sitting at home at your computer and like looking for jobs, right? Now, I'm just rattling this as an example off the top of my head. Maybe the Gap posts all their jobs in reality. I'm not sure, but you see my point, right? A lot of businesses are very small. In fact, where I am in the world, which is the province of Manitoba in Canada, 85% of people that have jobs work in small companies. Now, if you look at the city, like the city that I'm in, it has like a downtown area like every other city with big skyscrapers and all those kinds. It looks like there's a lot of big companies there, and there are. But most people are working in small companies, and those companies are usually off the radar, right? So a lot of those companies don't have the money to hire recruiters and do rounds and rounds of interviews. They don't need to, because if they're looking for like another technician or sales associate, what they do is they just like say, hey, we're looking to hire somebody else. And immediately, like that day or the next day, if you're the boss, if you're the hiring manager, you've got all your underlings coming to you and saying like, hey, I've got a brother or a cousin, or there's this person I know, they were my coworker in a previous job, and they were really good. And I suspect that they might be looking for work right now. I really think you should talk to them, So what's the incentive for you to post the job now? You know what I mean? Like, all these people that you know and trust and you've worked together for years, they're telling you, like, you need to check out this person. They would do a good job, right? So are you going to say like, no, I'm not going to check them out. I'm going to post the job and then have 1,000 strangers to have to go through their applications instead, right? So anyway, a lot of executive jobs are all hidden. Like that's the way executives get jobs. It's all through, it's not posted. They don't say, we're hiring a CEO, submit your resume. You have to be a known quantity. They have to trust that you're going to make decisions that are correct. And you can't trust a stranger. It's just that simple. Yeah, they might sound good, they might look good, but you don't really know them. You're not going to put your baby in their charge. It's like hiring someone and putting them in charge of your house or something while you're gone. Is that a risk you're prepared to take? Probably not, right? You would probably want some assurances. You'd probably get someone that you've known for years, or everybody that recommends them or something, So that, I could go on forever, but like, hopefully those are some examples of the hidden job market you can understand. So how do you get those jobs? You can't find them online. So here's how you reveal them. You reach out to these organizations and you say, hey, I'm looking. Could you use someone like me? If you could, let me know. Right? Now, most companies aren't looking for someone like you right now, but a few of them are, like maybe 2%, 5%, somewhere in there. So if you want 5 people to contact you back and say, hey, we might have something, send out 100 of those, right? That's how that works. But you got to go to the right person. You got to go to the hiring managers. You can't just go to like some low-level person, right? Anyway, there's a lot to it. I put all of that into this course. If anyone's interested, that's where all that stuff is. It's nothing, I can't explain it all live. Like, I'd be here for about 6 hours, and even then you wouldn't understand everything. So, that's the deal. Okay. But it starts with checking out that video that I put underneath in the description box of this live stream called How Successful People Get Jobs. You see, this is what I was talking about earlier. You're never taught this. Most people are never, ever taught this. This is how most people get jobs, and you were never taught it. You're left to figure it out on your own. And a lot of people don't. A lot of people spend their whole lives like just being oblivious to this. But most people learn about it to some degree through necessity, but they learn it later on. I'm sure everybody here has a friend or family member that got a job like because of a friend or family member. Not because of nepotism, but because that person drew their attention to, like, there's a vacancy here. It's not in my department, it's in the next department where I work, but you should talk to this person. You know, I might even be able to set up a meeting if I try. You know, I'm sure you know someone who's gotten a job like that. It was never posted. They didn't respond to a job ad, right? And that's where the majority of jobs are. That's also where all the good jobs are too. Doesn't mean you can't find good jobs that are posted. It's just that there's more of them that are hidden than that are posted. Amazed. LinkedIn profiles of most popular executives are basic at best. It's the majority introverts that often have to work harder to be visible. Well, executives, it depends. You know, there's a variety of reasons why they might have a LinkedIn profile. First of all, a lot of executives, even now, are still like really old. They're older than me. And as a result, they're not down with the internet. You know, they're not down with social networking, certainly. They're told that they should have a presence on this. They tend to be smarter people, so they can figure it out, but it's just not really their bag, you know? So they feel like, okay, everybody else is on here, all my competitors are on here, so I should be on here, you know, because I'm also representing my organization. You know, and it can serve its purposes, right? If people want to reach out to you, a potential business partner, a potential institutional customer, or, you know, they can, it's more convenient to do it over LinkedIn. And then you get some executives that like are really high up that like get someone to do their LinkedIn profile for them. They get their EA or somebody to their executive assistant to run their LinkedIn profile. You know, I've seen that. I've interacted with a few people like that. Mehmet says, have you ever quit a job or got laid off? If so, how do you deal with the stress? I know you've talked about the importance of networking, but would love to know how you dealt with the challenge. I actually, I dug out an old, it was like a Word document or something, like from 30 years ago or whatever it was, where I had written, this happened to me so much that I'd written down like checklist, you know, dealing with stress, dealing with hard stuff at work, because it was taking a real toll on me at one point. It was almost unmanageable. And so I had to, like, every little tip and trick I learned, I wrote down so that I could do it all. You know, you come home after an especially hard day and I could just do it all. Check. I put that into, I have a live stream coming up next week where I'm going to be talking about precisely that. That's the whole topic of the live stream. So I'll get into it there. But it was like little tips and tricks that help you. Here's my opinion, I guess, that's been formed through experience, and that is that you can't change how you feel. You have no control of how you feel. You do have control over what you do, right? So if you do something that tends to make you feel better, you know, like say you watch your favorite TV show or something like that, I don't know. You know, that you can get yourself to feel better, but you have no direct control over how you feel. You can't just say snap out of it, you know? So for me, it was a matter of like doing little things that end up making you feel better, and you have no control over that process, just like you have no control over like the big negative black cloud that's over top of you, you know? For job search, something that can help is if you feel that you're making progress, like let's say a lead doesn't work out. You were interviewing and you just got the word they're moving on with other candidates, right? and you really wanted this job and it was your only real lead at the moment, so it hits you really hard, right? But if you feel that like, okay, I know exactly what to do, and I know, and I'm going to really make some progress. I'm going to work hard at this, and I'm going to, send out applications, or I'm going to send out connection requests, or I'm going to, whatever it is that you're working on. Sometimes that helps. That helps because you feel like you're moving forward. If you just stop and wallow in this black cloud of depression, obviously it's going to feel bad, right? You're not going to come out of it very quickly. I know it's easier said than done. Sometimes you're just so affected that you can't even force yourself to work on anything. I get it. I totally get it. And I've been there. But if you can do something that makes you feel like you're moving forward, like there's hope, there's light on the, what is it? Hope on the horizon, light at the end of the tunnel, that kind of stuff, then it helps, So anyway, we're going to talk about that next week. I made like a bunch of notes to talk about that I think it's another episode of Honest HR Nitrous. But great question. We will get into it. You're welcome, Luvuyo Gam. Sorry once again about the name. Julia, thank you so much for your insightful answers. Bill, truly appreciate it. God bless you. And you too. I wish you every best of luck, Julia. And thank you for being here. And, it always seems really depressing. It seems like you're never going to get hired until you suddenly are, That's just how it seems. Just remember, this process is driven by random chance. It's like playing roulette, You're really not in that much control, of like the outcome. The outcome depends more on the other party than it does on you, right? And this is evidenced by how you can go down to a job interview and someone can just fail you really hard and say like, absolutely not. You got everything wrong. You have nothing that we want. Why do you think you could ever work here? And they make you feel really bad about yourself. And you feel like, I'm no good. But then you go down to another interview with a different employer. You give basically the same interview. Everybody gives the same interview. You have the same answers to the same questions usually. But this time they say, wow, you're awesome. Welcome aboard. It's like you didn't change between the two of those interviews. The only thing that changed was the employer. These people happen to be looking for what you have, and they see the stuff you have as having a lot of value. The other employer, they don't see the value in the stuff you have, but instead they see value in other things that you don't have. You know what I mean? And fine, whatever, all the more power to them. But, it's not like you did anything bad or you were unhireable or something like that for the first employer. They were just looking for something different, And there's, out there right now, there's an employer who's looking for exactly what you have right now. It's just that they're over here and you're over here and you're not connecting. Okay, so you're going to connect soon. So no one should feel like, oh, I'm no good, It's like, if you can dig a hole in the ground, you have something to contribute. If you could stack boxes, you've got something to contribute. You're hireable, and most people can do a hell of a lot more than that, including you. So everybody's got value. They can use you. And you're also trainable. So, it's just a matter of connecting to the people who are looking for what you have. That's all it is. After all the, pardon my French, but after all the bullshit that a lot of recruiters and other career type people throw around about, how to what skills to have and all this kind of stuff. It's like everybody's hireable and everybody's trainable. I think we all know this, but we're afraid to admit it. Mehmet says, I will definitely join the show. You're an awesome person, keeping everyone's spirit up. Well, thank you. I don't feel like I'm some, just so everyone knows, I don't feel like I'm some kind of motivational type person. I'm not. I'm just spelling out the reality to you. when people go through job search, they get depressed. And they get depressed because they have a twisted view of the world. Everything looks so much more pessimistic than what it is. And the reason they have that is because a lot of what's going on is hidden from them. You don't understand what's going on the other side of the table. You don't understand what's going through the mind of the recruiter when they reject you or when they book you for an interview. And so we tend to invent or imagine what's happening, and it tends to be very negative. You know what I mean? The reality is this is not negative. This is just a problem of connecting to people, right? You don't have to change. All you have to do is accurately represent yourself. And if you can package it in a slightly more friendly way, that always helps. If you can improve the way you communicate what you can do, that always helps. But they're basically looking for what you have. It's just a matter of connecting. Anyway, I'm gonna wrap this up in a little bit. I see there's 38 people here. Thank you for joining me today. Amaze says, can mentioning that you have a family work against you in an interview? Maybe additional insurance costs to the employer? I feel like I've been baiting into mentioning. I know in the United States they do things differently from what I'm used to. I mean, I'm in Canada, and I know in the US they're paranoid about a lot of things like that, because companies have to pay for health insurance and stuff down there, or individuals do or something. So I don't understand how that works. In Canada, it's everything just paid for everyone, so it makes it easy. But I'm not sure. I suspect that might be a thing. I don't know why they would bait you to reveal you have a family. Is having a family not allowed to work for them or something? I mean, aren't there laws down there that say that you can't discriminate against people based on stuff like this? I don't know. I would have thought so, but what do I know? Yeah, I'm not sure. That sounds like if you are in the United States, that would not surprise me. It shouldn't be. First of all, it shouldn't be a problem if you have a family. Secondly, you might want to do yourself a favor and try not to talk about that stuff. I mean, it's kind of hard if they ask you a direct question. Do you have a family? Do you have a spouse or a common law spouse? I understand it can be hard to sort of get out of that. Other than saying, well, that's a personal, confidential matter. I have a policy of not disclosing that, especially right off the bat, and I also don't see how that's really relevant, or something. I don't know if I'd say that, but you know what I mean? You could always sort of just keep that under your hat as much as possible. Because it's when you go off script and talk about a lot of personal things like this, that's where, it gets a bit risky, because you really don't know what biases and what preconceived notions these people have. It's just easier to just keep it relevant, when I go to a job interview, I don't want to talk about my hobbies. I don't want to talk about my political opinions. I don't want to talk about my family. I don't want to talk about, whether I like pets or not. You know what I mean? None of that crap is relevant, And it's suspicious if they want to talk about that stuff, more than just making chit-chat, Amaze says, sometimes at the end of an interview with a manager, they want to get familiar and prompt personal questions. Yeah, well, all I would say is keep it vague. You don't have to disclose all kinds of stuff, if you don't want to. Remember, you're in charge. No one can make you reveal things that you don't want to reveal, And don't feel that you have to, You know what I mean? I think that if someone's making chit-chat, it should be relatively straightforward to not disclose a lot of details about, say, your family or something. If it's just chit-chat. But if they're pushing for that, if it's some kind of, strategy to get you to reveal these things, then it would make sense if it's kind of harder to avoid talking about. You know what I mean? Anyway, I would just try and minimize that stuff. You can always smile and nod. If they tell you a story about what they did with their family, just keep it vague, or just smile and nod. You don't volunteer. Yeah, well, with my family, I take them fishing too, and you know, that's what I would do. Anyway, that's what I have to say about that. So hopefully that was somewhat useful. There's 38 of you guys here. Thank you for being here. It's Friday, hopefully everybody can have a half decent weekend. Remember, there's nothing wrong with you. This is a process of random chance. And it always feels like it's really dark and depressing until all of a sudden it isn't, So I wish you every bit of luck. Work on yourself as much as possible. Learn all you can, especially about like charisma and social skills. That really helps. And beyond that, just do your best and just wait it out, because this stuff will happen. For anyone who's interested, as you can see on the screen for the last 2 hours, I have some courses. If you're the type of person that is into courses, check out these things. All my knowledge for how to get hired is right there. In that course, there's a link in the description. If you are gainfully employed and you want to move up, you want to get promoted, I put a lot of my knowledge and experience of how to move up as an executive and get into an executive role into that course. This is sort of like the communication skills that you got to tack on. It's focused on writing, but more importantly, it's focused on what to say in different situations. So if you're into that, check out that course. There's also a link in the description. And this is more for people who are, trying to get into the entrepreneurship side or the business side. But if you have a traditional career job and you're wanting to get up into management, you want to be promoted into those roles, learning business is the way to get good at business. And that will qualify you for stepping into some of those roles. If you want it to be like a general manager or something like that and up, an MBA is damn useful. Then you will understand how businesses work and what you should do in different situations. Very, very useful stuff to know. So check out that. I have I have an MBA myself. I created this course. It's the best bang for the buck for any kind of option for getting you to learn business. So if you're into that, check that out. There's a link in the description. Other than that, I will be back on Monday with my usual live streams. And next Wednesday, as somebody brought up, one of the topics is coping with stress and depression during job search. So if you're particularly interested in that topic, I've got to create all my live stream placeholders and stuff. You should see that on my channel. I think it's on Wednesday next week. So show up for that too. Thank you to Amaze. Thank you to Mehmet, Julia, Lavuyo Gam, my favorite person. Me and Lavuyo are like this, so we go way back to the good old days. Bob, and everyone who participated. Thank you so much. You guys are awesome. Take care. Best of luck. Have a good weekend. I'll see you soon.